looks like I think we've got everybody in here who's going to be joining us. So my name's John Graham. I'm the Elementary Digital Learning Specialist at the Maine Department of Education. And I'm hoping to share some tools that folks might be using with teachers in their classroom, with students, in a variety of settings, maybe one-on-one, maybe in small groups. Maybe you're joining in part of another class and you're kind of connecting in with students. So hopefully we're just focusing on 4 tools today, but hopefully the tools that we go over are things that you can, get a sense of if this is something that maybe it's already being used or something that you'd like to use with students. And then we're going to hopefully give you some resources. So if you want to spend more time looking at these tools in depth, you'll be able to do that in the next week or so. And then we're going to have some follow-up sessions later on in the month, and we'll be able to look more closely at a tool like Google Classroom. So if you've used it a little bit and maybe have some questions or just want to come back and share your experiences, we'll have some time to do that later on. So we're going to have follow-up sessions for the different tools that we go over today. So this session is more designed to, I guess, just kind of give you a little overview of some of the things that you can do with these tools, ways that teachers are using them right now, and kind of some thinking going forward. I should point out that the 4 tools that we're going to be showing, you can use across any platform. So you can use it on MacBooks, iPads, Chromebooks, what have you. And I think that's really one of the benefits here. And all of the PD that we refer to is free. Some of it requires signing up ahead of time. There's some that are video sessions that you might join. There's some that are recorded that you might refer to, and then some that are more text that you may kind of read through documentation. So the first one that we're going to focus on, I'm going to turn it over to my counterpart, Emma, to talk about Google Classroom.
Hi everyone, I'm Emma Banks and I'm the Secondary Digital Learning and Computer Science Specialist at the DOE. And I am going to start us off with Google Classroom today. And I'm going to have to get out of our presentation to give a demonstration, but oh, it's going to go right to it. It is hyperlinked, John. I clicked on it. So Google Classroom is a great tool. It is a full-fledged learning management system for connecting and communicating with your students. You can send announcements and resources, post content, create, assign, and receive work. If you're using a Google Classroom for yourself, or if you're using it alongside a teacher, all of these functions can be made available to you depending on the permissions and how things are set up. But I'm going to show you a couple of things in Google Classroom to kind of give you an idea of the functionality that it has and some of the features that it has. So this is a classroom that I just recently set up. It's kind of brand new. There's only a few things I've done on it. You can tell that I am in the teacher side because there's this class code here, and when you're added as a student, this class code won't show up, as well as this grade function won't be visible. So this is from the teacher to the teacher side of things. So when you go into the classwork tab, this is where you can create assignments, quizzes, post material, create topics. The topics show up for your students over here as a sort of index. So you can see that I have 2 different topics set up. And then if I want to create a new assignment, I can go in here and I can set it up to where I'm uploading a file or putting in a YouTube video or whatever is. Actually, I'm going to go into resync.
He said what?
So then you can upload this, and then I could say, please complete this. And I can assign it to either all students, or I can assign it to 1 student or whoever I have. I only have 2 students, so it's not a whole lot of options. And then I can pick which topic that I want that to go under and what the due date might be and a time, how many points it's worth. If I had a rubric, I could put that in here as well. And then I can go ahead and click the assign button, or I can schedule it or save it as a draft if I'm not quite ready to make it available. And so I'm going to go ahead and click assign. And then that shows up right here. And that, because I put that in the digital, no, I didn't. I put it in top. Oh, I didn't put it in a topic. Because I didn't put it in a topic, it's going to show up right here. If I had chosen a topic for it, it would show up in one of these areas, one of the topics that I designated for. Then you can get it over and see who is added as a teacher, who is a student. You can see grade information if there's been stuff submitted, if it was late, the class average. You can sort by student. So there's a lot of functionality in there as well. One of the things I'll point out is that if you are looking to grade, then you'll want to put like an assignment or a question. But if you're looking to just share out content, then the material option is a really great one, because you can upload a YouTube video, you can insert a Google Drive folder file, you can insert a link to a website. And then this is kind of just, it sends it to them as material versus giving them something that they need to be sending back. So if you're trying to push out content, the material option is a really great one. One of the other things I'll show you is just the difference between the student view and the teacher view. This is still in the teacher view because we still have the grades here and the class code, but I have the student view open over here. I added myself, I added a different one of my email addresses as a student account so that I could see what it looks like from a student perspective. And so we've got classwork, and I've got all the things that have been assigned in my topic. And then I can see who's the teacher of the class and who are my classmates. And so it looks really similar. So you imagine if you're on the teacher side, it looks really similar, and the feel of it is very similar. So you can kind of have an idea of what your students are experiencing when you're going through that. And so there's a bunch of different things that you can do with this. And one of our sessions later is going to be kind of digging deeper into Google Classroom. So just keep that in mind. And I'm going to stop sharing my screen now. And I'm happy to try to address any questions that anyone might have in the chat. John is going to take our next tool, so feel free to kind of post any thoughts that you might have or questions in the chat, and I'm going to pass it back off to him.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you have any questions about Google Classroom, I would say definitely put them over in the chat, and we'll try to address them as best we can. And we did want to make sure we share my screen. Where's the share?
Oh, I forgot about those 2 professional learning pages. Is that what you're getting ready to do?
These guys.
Perfect. Thank you. I forgot about those. Yeah, so the Teacher Center has a ton of videos and resources directly targeted towards using Google tools for teaching. And the PD handbook is a really comprehensive handbook of different PD options for Google Apps and Google Classroom in specific. So those are fantastic resources for learning a little bit more about Google Classroom. Thank you for remembering that.
Not a problem. So moving along, I'm going to talk about Seesaw. So Google Classroom tends to be in the late elementary up through high school, whereas earlier grade levels, there are a few different tools that are out there, but I would say based on what I'm hearing from talking with teachers out in our schools, I think Seesaw tends to be the most popular one that folks are using. So that's what I'm going to be talking about today. So similar to Google Classroom in a lot of ways, in that you can deliver content out to students, and then you can receive work and stuff back from students. So again, just like with the Google Classroom, it's kind of a basic setup here to show you. Some of you might have used Seesaw as maybe part of a classroom or worked in a classroom with students who are using Seesaw. If you are working with a teacher during this time, I would maybe request co-teacher access, so you are able to work with a variety of kids. If you have different kids within a classroom that you're working with, that seems to be one of the challenges. Sometimes teachers are adding support staff as other students, and they can't really interact with students in the same way. So that's one of the things I did want to make sure that I pointed out here. So just getting started. So you can see on the right-hand side there, I just have one sample student in there. You could have it as small as working one-on-one with one student if you wanted to, but obviously you can have a full-blown class. Some districts have opted into the Seesaw for Schools option, which is a paid option, and it does allow for a little bit more management and in terms of connecting with parents, because you can use this to connect and share content with parents. It's nice to have that Seesaw for Schools option just because you can kind of have those consistent connections across different classes and across different grades. But a lot of schools just urge their teachers to set up their own classrooms because that level is free. So if that is the case, then just kind of know that you're not necessarily going to be able to inherit all of those parent contacts in there. So there is a certain level of setup required if you're getting started with this in the free version. So to add an assignment, over here where I have the green plus button, I'm going to just try adding an activity. I did want to point out before I'm not really going to get into the library, but over here on the side, it has this browse the community library. There are so many different sessions out there that are just freely available that you can grab and share with your students. It's a great way to get some different ideas and see some different things that people are doing. Not all that different from using like Teachers Pay Teachers for worksheets. So that's something to consider looking at. But I'm going to try creating an activity just so you can get a sense of how that works. So we'd actually had done a session with phys ed teachers earlier this week. So kind of going to do the same session, and a lot of people were doing bingo boards or choice boards. So I'm going to kind of continue with that. So I'm doing a weekly PE bingo. So if that was your activity that you were having kids do, you could have a list of instructions here of what you wanted them to do. I'm going to put something in there, but you could also put in voice instructions. So if you're working with elementary level or kids that are struggling readers, it might make more sense to put in instructions here. You could record yourself giving them instructions. The other thing that you can do is you can add in multimedia instructions. So if you have an example of work that you wanted them to do, or you had some additional instructions. So part of my bingo board involves juggling. So I grabbed this video about juggling, and I'm just going to click add here. So to add a video from YouTube, I'm actually going to use this one link, but you could also bring in videos that you've made or recorded. If you have things on, say, Google Drive or something like that, you could pull those across. You could have them respond to a photograph, or you could do kind of a marked up drawing that way, or just kind of a general note in there. So a variety of different things that you can attach into your individual activities. So if I click link and paste in my URL from that YouTube, then I'm clicking the green checkbox over here. And yes, that is the video that I want. I could, if I wanted to, I could put a recording in here to add some additional information, or I could put in some captions if I maybe wanted to put some paraphrase, maybe what's happening in the video. So just know that those are some nice accessibility options in there. So I hit the green check. I'm not going to do those things at this time. And then it's going to bring me back here. And you can see there's a link attached right here. That's what that's showing. There we go. Then my actual template that I'm going to be using. So this is what the students are actually going to be marking up. So you can think of it as like a worksheet or something like that. And I'm actually going to be uploading something from my computer, and it's this bingo board. So it says you can add 9 more photos. So you could add a whole bunch of stuff in here if you wanted to. But I'm just going to be doing this one. This is what it looks like right here. So you can see there's a series of different activities that students are being asked to do. Up here, it has practice juggling, see YouTube video. Hence, I attached a YouTube video on there for them to look at. I could mark this up in some way if I wanted to, but I don't need to. You can see I have all these tools here. It's very similar to what students will see when they're marking up this, marking up that sheet as well. So down there, you can see template attached. It's what I want it to be. And then I can click save down here, and that's going to save the activity. So I've created this activity. You could do the same thing if you pulled down a different Seesaw activity from the library, but the key here is you have to assign it to a class. So I only have my one class with my one student, so I'm going to make sure that's checked off, assigned to one class. Then to actually view that activity, we can see what it looks like in there. So for students, so you can see here, try as a student. So if I click in here, you can see what it would look like as a student. So students going to get that assignment up at the top where it has view instructions. They could click that, watch the video there for that juggling part, but then they can use these tools down at the bottom to mark all of these up however they see fit. They're also on the side, they'd have options here. They could make an audio recording or make a video recording. So maybe I'd say, you know, please pick one of these activities and record yourself doing, you know, doing the activity. So that's something that you could do as well. So there are a few different options in here, different things that they can modify on this. When they are done, one of the things that's kind of a bummer about this example is theoretically you would have students get this open every day and they'd mark up the ones that they do, and they'd be saving the draft throughout the week, and then they'd submit it, hitting the green check mark when they're all done. You know, if you wanted them to black out the board or get like 3 different rows completed or something like that. The unfortunate thing is that this draft option is only available if you have a paid account. So that's something you're going to have to find out from your tech department or whomever if you have a paid account to have that accessibility. But if you don't, you still can go through and do this check mark. It's just it makes a submission every time. So if we click that, it's going to load. And then back on the teacher side, I'd be able to see that student work loads up. So my sample student, I can see that he's put this in here, he or she. I can click down here to like it. That's easy enough. But I could also make a comment down here. And I can do, oops, I can type up a comment, or I could click and record a voice comment. So lots of different features in here. This is very, I think, elementary focused, very easy for students to pick up a lot of the aspects of this, so they're able to you know, share things, mark things up, record themselves, whether a video or an audio recording. And then I don't really getting into the whole parent sharing feature, but that can be a piece of this as well that a lot of teachers like, is that students can really easily, their work can be shared with parents, so parents can check out what it is that they're doing. So with Seesaw, I think it's a pretty easy tool, and I would say if you have teachers in your school already using it, then you might have some resources to check out locally. They do, however, offer regular live PD sessions, and you can sign up to do those, or they have a lot of recorded ones that you can access on their website, which is linked here. So I definitely say if you're interested in kind of learning more about Seesaw, there are definitely a lot of opportunities there. And there's so much that you can do with it, well beyond the things that I covered in this short period of time. So I'm gonna take any questions that you guys might have in the chat section, and I will hand the room back over to Emma if I can figure out how to stop my share. There we go.
All right, gotta actually hit that unmute button. I was getting there. Took me an extra minute. Okay, so the next tool that we're going to talk about is Padlet, and I'm going to have to fix my screen sharing. I'm sorry, I have two screens, so it can get a little tricky. Can you see the pink Padlet slide?
Yes.
Yes, okay, thank you. I just wanted to double check. I had some issues with the last session, so. Okay, so Padlet is basically an interactive bulletin board. It is someplace where students and teachers can post content. You can post images, video, audio. You can link to websites. There are options to embed the Padlet into learning management systems, depending on the learning management system that you're using. And so I will kind of show you around Padlet a little bit. One thing I will say is that you only are able to have 3, it looks like potentially 4 now, because I see 2 blank boxes here, 3 or 4 Padlets before you will hit a paywall where you have to pay for full functionality to have like an unlimited amount of Padlets. But you get 3 or 4 for free, and for me that has worked out really well. I just kind of rotate the ones that I'm using, and you can archive stuff. So to make a Padlet, I would click on this button, and then you can pick your layout. They have like a map. You could do a timeline. If you're going to have students do like a history or geography assignment, one of those might be good. If you want them to be able to organize their thoughts and connect them, then you might pick like a canvas, or you could just pick like something with a wall where it kind of organizes them in columns. And then once you create it, you can change what your title is, what the description is. That all shows up here. You can add an icon if you want to have an icon with it to make it a little bit more fun. You can customize your URL so that when you send it to your students, you don't have to have something crazy like this. You could, do padlet.com/ Mrs. Johnson's English class or something like that. You can change all kinds of things about it, including the wallpaper, whether it's a light or dark theme. And then down here is where you get to some of the more intriguing features, which is you can require approval before somebody can actually have their post show up. It will automatically filter profanity if you turn that on. You can have comments to posts. You can set it up to where they can react or give a numeric score, like if you wanted to do, score of 1 to 4 or something like that. And then right here is where you have the ability to display author name above each post, so that allows for you to either keep a post anonymous or have students kind of put their name with it. And to actually post, you can either double click and a post will pop up, or you can, down here there's the little pink button. And then once you get in here, there's all of these options for what you can do. You can upload a file, you can link to a website, you can take a snapshot, you can record your screen, you can draw. There's all sorts of things that you can do with this. So one thing that I like to do is show, because a YouTube video shows up very well in a Padlet. So everything is loading very slow on my computer, but once you have your link, you can come back here and you can just drop it in, save, and then it shows up in your Padlet. So you can put a title to it and somebody can actually click on this and check it out. So from the Padlet dashboard, I just want to show one really cool feature that I think is really a great feature for trying to brainstorm how you might use Padlet. and that is the gallery. And they have a ton of examples that you can remake as a template, or you can just check it out and see what people have done. There are a ton of things on here. So I encourage you to check it out if you're interested in using Padlet, because you can kind of see like what other people have done, how they've used it. This one's really cool. I've never seen this one. But that is all accessible from the Padlet dashboard, which is what you'll see when you first create your account and you're on here. You've got this is your home page, so to say. And so if you're interested in kind of exploring a little bit more about Padlet, there are a couple of resources in our slide deck. One is using Padlet for collaboration, which is like a teacher type of blog post, which is really phenomenal, talking about using it specifically for the collaboration piece of online learning. And then another one that I really like is this 30 ways to use Padlet in the classroom, because it provides a list of really practical applications for how you might actually use it with students in the class. So there are a bunch of ways that you can use it. I like to liken it to a virtual bulletin board because I think that that's kind of the closest tangible thing that you could liken it to. I also, in an earlier session, we had somebody compare it to Pinterest, and I think that that's a really good comparison as well, except I would say that Padlet is definitely more dynamic than Pinterest. Pinterest is kind of just like, it links you out constantly, whereas Padlet is a little bit more in-house. You can view more things without having to exit out of it. So if you have any questions about Padlet, I'm happy to address them in the chat. We're also going to be providing sessions in the future that talk a little bit more about Padlet. So I see somebody asking for the link to the slideshow in the chat, so I'll drop that in again. But I'm going to hand it back off to John, and he's going to talk a little bit about Flipgrid.
All right, so let me share my screen. Oops. There we go. So I'm going to be talking about Flipgrid as kind of the last one to share. So Flipgrid I think it's kind of similar to Seesaw in a lot of ways, in that the idea is that you kind of give people a prompt and they're responding to it, but I think it's much more streamlined in that the idea is that students are just giving back video response prompts, which can be a lot of fun, and I think you can connect with students in a really unique and interesting way. I've definitely seen over the years with kids becoming increasingly interested in kind of YouTube videos and things like that, that students have this new way of presenting information back that can be really funny to see and hear. Oops. Get on to... All right, so Flipgrid, once you get on there are a few different ways that you can set it up. You can have it set up so it connects really nicely with Google Classroom, for example, or something like Seesaw. But when I get to the end of mine, I'll show you how it gives you kind of a code that you'd be sharing out with people. And that's essentially what you'd be copying and pasting into whatever delivery system you'd be using. So I'm going to add a new grid. Oops. Add a new grid. And so this part kind of gets into the different pieces. Oops. Oh wait, I didn't want to make a new grid. I have my grid down here. So my grid's kind of like my class. That's right. And then within my class, I've got the different topics. So I have kind of this, I'm going to be doing kind of the same activity, this plank challenge that I'd set up for folks. So I'm going to do a new topic. So you kind of want to think of the topic as any prompt that you're giving students to respond to would be a topic. Your grid's kind of more of your class or your group that you have them in. So you might have multiple grids with multiple topics within those different grids. So we're doing the plank challenge. And the prompt, I'm going to have them record yourself doing a plank or reflecting on doing a plank. And you can set the record time on this. I think I neglected to point this out in earlier sessions, but you do have some leeway with the length of time that you can allow students to record things. I'm going to be adding a YouTube video, but you could upload an image, you could put in text, you could record yourself explaining the prompt, you could do, use an iMovie or something like that and make a really snazzy video to share on there. But for this case, I'm just going to use YouTube, and I had found this video demonstrating how to do a plank and kind of some of the common issues that people have when doing a plank. So I'm going to paste that in there. Next. Yes, this is the video that we want. So I'm going to add that. You can see the video is added right in there. I'm creating that topic. And that's all set. So here you can see it has Flipgrid and it's got that code that I can use. It also has a QR code on here. I should point out, because somebody had mentioned this in our session earlier today, and I have heard this from a few teachers out there, that while Flipgrid's awesome, even to use in like a regular classroom, one of the challenges here is if you have all these QR codes that you have in your classroom, kids are not going to easily be able to access those during this time. So in a classroom, it's great to have QR codes. For right now, that might present some issues. So you might want to just find a way of sharing out your Flipgrid content. So I was mentioning earlier, you can like share it easily through Google Classroom, but you could copy this link and you could share it out through a variety of other avenues. Then just to show you what it looks like on the student side, they go on, so they, pretty obvious, they're going to be clicking on this video. Over here, they have, they'd have their prompt. Not a lot there. Obviously, you could put a lot of text or video or audio recording just to kind of engage them with what's going on. Then down here, you just click plus to record a response. Oh, that's right, because my student account isn't logged in. So if I had an account logged in, let's see if I can do it from my end just to kind of show you, record a response. So from my end, if I was recording it, it's just this record button down here. Click record, does the little countdown. Records a little bit. You can see there's this bar that's going to go around to make sure they're staying within their time parameters. They can pause it if they want to. They can click redo if they want to completely get rid of it. They have all of these little things they can add in, which can be nice for fun, nice, sometimes distractions that aren't so nice. But then once they're done with that, they just click next to move on. Another feature that I really like is it allows, if you want, you don't have to do this, but kids' videos that they record can go into the classroom once they're approved, and other students could look at their videos and give feedback on the videos, which is, I think, a really nice feature, especially during this time period where kids are kind of looking for those little connections. They'll want to be seeing their peers and stuff like that. So I think that's just a little consideration to be making, that you could do a couple easy things using a tool like Flipgrid, and kids would certainly get a kick out of seeing their peers doing different things. I did want to mention that Flipgrid does have regular PD sessions. They do live ones that have a variety of focuses on them. I've sat through a couple. I think they're pretty good. They usually have a few different people manning them, kind of like Emma and I are working together to run this session. So usually they're pretty responsive to their chat room if people are asking questions and demonstrating things in real time. So if you're interested in learning more about Flipgrid, that's certainly a resource that you could look into. And the last thing I want to show, just kind of a little brief thing, because I really like podcasts, and I think this is a great opportunity to be sharing that medium with students, because it allows them to kind of access a different kind of medium that maybe they're not using all that often. But I wanted to share this one, the Peace Out podcast, which is a mindfulness meditation podcast. I work with elementary teachers, so I think this certainly caters to a younger grade level, but there are a lot of like meditative, calming things that you could be sharing out, different kind of podcasts and apps out there. And that's something where I knew we were going to be working with EdTechs. Often you're working with students who might be having a lot of struggles during this time, really looking for connections. And many of you will have very close connections with your students. And I think just being kind of aware that there are some pieces like this that you might consider sharing out, in addition to just finding ways to reach out and contact with your kids, because they'll be so happy to just hear from you, find out what's going on, and making those connections. That social emotional piece is really, really important. And I think we can't understate how important support staff is in school with making really close relationships with a lot of the students out there. So we do have a nice chunk of time, so we can do a little Q&A time if folks have some questions that they're curious about. I also wanted to mention that in here is our bit.ly link. So you make sure you copy this down. It is case sensitive, so it's bit.ly/uppercase, all of these letters, MDOE-DLPD. So if you go to that, I can actually show you what that form will look like. Can you guys see this form?
Yes.
Great. All right, so at the top, your email address. So really important that you get this email address correct. Otherwise, your certificate is not going to go to the right place. And then your first name, last name, and then the date that you took the whatever session is. That will help me identify. So in the future, we're going to have these recordings. People can do it at a future time. This will just help me kind of keep things straight in terms of sending things out. The program that I'm using to send out certificates, I can only do 100 per day. So it might be a couple days before people in this group receive theirs, just because we had well over 100 people this morning. So we're going to be kind of working through sending out those certificates in waves. So I would say if you haven't received this, in the next week, you can email me and just ask me where it is. If for some reason maybe there was the wrong email or something in there, I have a list of all of these, so I'll be able to go back and actually be able to access this form and use it to give people the original form information that they filled out. And if we're missing anything, then we'll make sure we reconnect you with whatever it is that you need. All right, so we've got, I think, some time for questions. If people have questions, I haven't been watching the chat. Let me stop my share here.
When you're using Flipgrid, where did you find the code to send out to the students?
In Flipgrid, I gotta jog my own memory. Once you're done creating it, I think there's a share button. Let me share my screen. So in here, you can see my Flipgrid again. So this is the activity within my grid. If I click the share, that's where the sharing options come up.
Can you post the place where I go to get my certificate again?
Can I share the link?
Yes.
Yep, we can put the link
I
over
just put it in the chat.
Yep.
So John, there's a couple of questions in the chat. One is, can you embed a link to Flipgrid in a Seesaw assignment?
I missed the tail end of that.
Oh,
Can
sorry.
you embed a Flipgrid in what?
Into a Seesaw assignment.
I don't know if you can embed it. I haven't tried that before, but you certainly could put the link in there, and
And then they can
I
just
think it would
hyperlink
send
it.
them out there. Yeah.
And then there's also, this says, I teach special ed and use a phonics program. I need a program where I can scan and post word lists and reading passages for students that they could bring up and do together. What would we recommend?
So one of the things I would suggest is if your school is already using one of these programs like Seesaw or Google Classroom, that would be my first choice. I'd always kind of lean towards going with what people are familiar with. It can be kind of difficult to roll out something brand new, especially right now. Obviously, I mean, where I work at the elementary level, I mean, I really like Seesaw for working with early elementary. I think for later elementary and up, I think Google Classroom works fantastic. But
Yeah, I
I
think
would
both of
certainly lean
those.
on if you have something that kids are already familiar with or people are already using.
Yeah, I was just gonna say,
Thank you.
I think that both of those are probably, both of those are capable of doing what you're talking about for sure. So I think
Yeah,
just meeting your students
absolutely.
on whatever platform they're on is definitely where you want to be.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So while people are thinking if there are other questions that you want to ask in these last few minutes, I just want to share that we do have our a few more sessions upcoming. You'll notice that they're not next week; they're the week after. Our intention with that is to provide some time for people to dig into these tools and see if there are specific questions or something that comes up that you want to bring to these follow-up sessions to kind of dig into a little bit deeper. So as far as anything we've talked about today, if you want to join in another week, then you might have had some time to kind of dig in and see if you have other questions that do develop over time. So I just wanted to go ahead and share this. We had some questions about when we were doing follow-up and what sessions we're going to focus on what. So all this information is on the DOE website as well. I see a question from Betsy about the graphics session, and it's interesting that you asked because we've actually been asked about it. I think that there's some interest. We're kind of leaving this session a little bit more open as far as we're not going to focus on specific tools. We might talk about a few, but the goal of that session is going to be to just kind of talk about strategies for how you might take things that would traditionally be just text-based and turn them into like a graphic or an infographic, how you might incorporate memes and GIFs or use posters to kind of try to convey the messages to students in a more graphically, visually appealing kind of way. So that's going to be the focus of that session.
Well, I guess if we don't have any more questions, oh, I did see that question. So we will be offering these. We'll be doing recordings of these. Obviously, like with the help sessions, we won't be able to, answer your questions if you're watching it at a future time. But I think there should be some, relevant content there and questions. And certainly, you can email us questions between now and then. We'll try to get back to you as best as we can. I think the thinking was that we kind of share some of this information, get people kind of thinking about a few different tools, and then people would be able to spend some time, exploring them in a little bit more depth, and then we'd have a follow-up session later on. I think that's kind of a model we're interested in, seeing if educators out there are interested in something like that. I feel like spending some time learning the actual nuts and bolts of like Seesaw or Flipgrid, the ones that I talked about, probably it's a little bit easier to do it on your own time, and then you can come back with us if you have any questions. And certainly if you use some of these and have some success with students, or you're feeling really confident or excited about it, you certainly can come back and share those as well. I think a lot of the best ideas that I've received or teachers have received in the sessions that we've offered, it's just when things have been open and people can share what they're doing, and people often get ideas that they really like hearing from their peers. So hopefully everybody got a little bit of something that they were happy to use, and we'll try some things out in the next week or so, and then feel free to come check back in with us again, and we'll talk about and do some troubleshooting and have some reflecting on our sandboxing time with these toys. All right, have a great afternoon, everybody. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.